I want to welcome in retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton to talk more about this crisis that we see developing before our eyes, particularly the threat in Kyiv tonight. I want to talk about that, but first, what Leland was talking about, the threat of nuclear war. What is the greatest risk right now in a serious miscalculation, given the fact that today President Vladimir Putin said he is at a heightened alert, his troops and his military, in terms of his nuclear capabilities?
Well, Marty, as Leland articulated, the stakes are getting ever higher. It is, and he also said it, in my career, I never really heard the term in terms of the president saying that concerning any degree at all about nuclear war. So it also shows that Putin is, I'm sure, is stymied by the lack of operational momentum in this campaign. He seems to have his forces in the north and the forces in the east are somewhat stymied at this point. They've lost the operational momentum. And so you have a Putin who's almost backed into a corner, is going to raise the stakes, certainly from a diplomatic standpoint or a strategic communication standpoint, says, I'm going to go ahead and raise my posture of my nuclear forces. And so a couple of things come to mind. Number one is it's not going well in the field. In fact, I'm stunned that it's not going well in the field. Secondly, forces are probably undermanned. Ukraine is the size of Texas. It's the second largest nation state in Europe. And if you try to put in a force of, say, 200,000 or 150,000 or whatever number you want to throw there, you cannot be everywhere all the time. And so if you're trying to be everywhere, you're really nowhere. But let's now get back down to Kyiv and Kharkiv.
Right. So the concern with Kyiv is, as you're saying, Putin has not brought the full force of the Russian military against Ukraine to this point. He's been frustrated, he's been deterred, he's been slowed. So how long can Ukraine sustain this as we watch these two massive convoys, as we speak right now, move in on the capital city?
Well, we're starting day 6. Let me put in perspective, though, from a historical standpoint. Operation Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, for us to invade Iraq took 26 days. And that was with air superiority. That was with the world's best military. So putting that into perspective. However, credit goes to the Ukrainians. Credit goes to President Zelensky. He's just done an extraordinary job. Credit also goes to the Ukrainian military and the civilian populace. But in and around, Kyiv is surrounded right now. And so as he's lost operational momentum, he's still got other weapons in his arsenal that can break that open. Rather than going street by street or block by block, he can go with much longer range artillery.
So you're talking about carpet bombs, other missiles.
There's reports, and I've got a report just before we came on set of a use of a thermobaric bomb weapon in Kharkiv, which is a decimating weapon.
There's no chance of life if you drop something like that.
You can wipe out a battalion of 700 or 800 soldiers in a matter of minutes.
So in terms of preparing for something like that, they see that coming. What's the military might behind reacting to a potential threat like that?
Well, if I'm the Ukrainian military, I have to hunker down. And the advantage the Ukrainian military has is they're fighting on their home turf. They're fighting for their freedom, they're fighting for democracy and so forth. And they will, I believe, that what they've demonstrated over these last several days, and you and I started on this just a couple days or a couple nights or so ago, they will fight to the end. They've demonstrated that. So that's on their side. However, with overwhelming force, not yet overwhelming advantage, but overwhelming force, they're just going to have to be able to fight and not give up. And then also what's so important is NATO and the United States-led NATO efforts to resupply weapons and humanitarian assistance and so forth for Ukraine, to show them that externally outside of Ukraine, that they have the free world's support. But it also has to come down, as President Zelensky said almost on day one, he says, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition.
Right, and that's the silver lining to all of this. You've got the United States, Great Britain, France, other nations providing a lot of support, military, humanitarian support as well. I want to talk to you, though, about airspace in this portion of the world. It is contested right now. The U.S. says it is exploring some options. One of those being discussed is the deconfliction mechanism.
Sure.
This is your expertise. What are some of the other options, and why is the airspace so important and critical at this point?
Well, I believe what you're referring to is European airspace, not Ukrainian airspace, and that's to prevent Russian aircraft from, even airliners, from going in and out and closing down the airspace. But What is not on the table, what my sources tell me, is to put some type of a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That's an act of war. And so that is something that would again, unnecessarily, in my view, escalate the conflict. Remember, Putin's already backed into a corner. And so I don't believe we're in a position where we actually need to do that. In fact, the Ukrainians still own some modicum of air superiority at this point. Now, that's not going to last forever. But what I would consider doing is really try to rearm with weapons, with humanitarian and so forth. Going into and trying to do a no-fly zone, I don't believe is on the table. It's also would create an act of war, which, again, Ukraine is not a Article 5 nation.
Right.
And so there's lots of things going on here. Last point is, we've been focused up to this point in really the military piece, but there's other national security tools to use. There's diplomacies, there's economic and finance, there's information war. By the way, this is the first war is almost being fought on a
Everybody's
iPhone.
watching it unfold before
Absolutely.
their eyes.
And so, but there's also other tools of instruments that we should be using, not just the military one, in terms of what U.S.-led NATO and other free world, allies and partners are doing.
We're seeing the implications of the sanctions already, and also the communication breakdown. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.